Seventh in line is Arjun. Superpowered beings living alongside regular humans has been a recurring theme in anime, or media in general for that matter. Oftentimes they come into conflict with the more mundane and ordinary residents of the world, and those conflicts can end up being quite brutal. Arjun brings us to that world, where after getting run over by a truck, Kei, instead of waking up in another world, awakes as an Arjun. The problem? Arjun have high bounties over their heads, and Kei finds himself being betrayed by all that he knew with the exception of his lone friend. Together the two make a run for it and come in contact with the hidden society of Arjun. However, it turns out that Arjun aren't really the nicest people around, especially after years of abuse and being ostracized. Giving me some serious Tokyo Ghoul vibes here, Arjun for me is quite the nice dark fantasy story that presents an interesting battle of ideals. It's got some cool social commentary that you can take note of, sprinkled atop the narrative that's filled to the brim with action and suspense. Next is a cult classic, Elfen Lied. One of the often talked about classics is Elfen Lied. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one anime that often appears in random recommendations, but for good reason too. Elfen Lied talks of Lucy, a special breed of human who escapes from a research facility. During the breakout, she gets shot and gets left with a split personality. Later, two university students stumble upon her and decide to take her home. However, trouble pursues the students as they have to deal with not only government agencies going after Lucy, but of their new companion's traumatic past and dark split personality. When it comes to Elfen Lied, there are lots of things to like about it. You can say that it's a show with ample doses of mutant action, split personalities, nudity, sudden mood swings, and loads of gore. Yes, this is a show that would have been censored to hell and back under today's standards, but it's one of the most enduring action horror shows in anime history, and for good reason too. We continue with an oldie but goodie, Akira. Akira, the anime movie that's long been credited as the one that brought anime past the borders of Japan and into the West. One of the pioneers of anime, Akira still holds up quite well today. Set in a Tokyo that's been rebuilt from the ashes of a Third World War, Akira puts us in a city rife with crime and corruption. Caught in a battle between biker gangs, a youth named Tetsuo gets taken into custody along with one of the people seen exhibiting superpowers. As things would have it, Tetsuo's powers also awaken, and it drives him insane, leading him to break away from the lab in a warpath. It's up to his friend Kaneda to stop him. One of the most controversial and beloved anime movies to have ever been made, Akira is a movie that delves into psychology, sci-fi, and horror. It's one of those overly violent titles that aren't for the faint of heart, but it provides its fair share of bloodbaths. Overall, Akira gives the complete experience that would surely enrich anyone watching it. And hey, it did convince people decades ago that anime is a medium to be taken seriously.
Nani?
Up for some more vampire action? Well, we've got one more for this list, and I saved the best for last. In Great Britain, there exists an organisation that protects people from monsters that prey upon people. The organisation, aptly named Hellsing, is led by Integra and his star operative, the vampire Alucard. Standing against them is the rival organisation, the Catholic Church, and the enigmatic Father Anderson. Caught in all of this is a survivor of a police squad who becomes a vampire herself, and joining Hellsing, the organisation uncovers a plot of apocalyptic proportions that threatens the world. Amazing animation, great fights, unrelenting violence, some of the best showcases of powers in anime. What more could you ask for in a fantasy horror series? Hellsing is one of the most popular series of the genre. It's something better watched than read, so go ahead and start watching it now. Standing in our runner-up spot in second place is Berserk. When it comes to horror and unrestrained violence, I find few shows capable of holding a candle to Berserk in that regard. Of course, I'm talking about the 1997 Berserk, not the recent one that had its fair share of online popcorn. Berserk is the story of Guts, an orphan who embraces the battlefield, fighting for his life day after day. His life takes a huge turn after his run-in with the Band of the Hawk, a mercenary group led by the charismatic Griffith. Joining the group as a formidable new ally, Guts quickly realizes the world isn't as simple as he thought it was. After all, bloodshed and strength aren't everything in this grim world. What more needs to be said about Berserk? Starring one of the most badass and outright brutal protagonists out there, there is a reason why the series has become a classic that stood the test of time. Do take note though, the anime does have some heavy modifications in order to tone down the violence, but I think it's a decent adaptation overall, unlike the latest one. Topping off yet another list is Parasite. I think when it comes to combining action and its signature style of body horror, few titles can come close to Parasite. For those of you who don't know about the series, Parasite is basically a show about an alien invasion. Only this time, they don't come in spaceships or look like those green or grey men we've come to know aliens for. Instead, these organisms come in the form of parasites that latch onto humans and possess them, turning them into transformative monsters with an appetite for human flesh. Thankfully, our protagonist Shinichi was able to stop a hostile takeover, but in exchange, said parasite gets stuck in his hand. The parasite, called Migi, comes to life as his transforming hand, and the duo gets forced to put aside their differences in order to survive the crapsack world where fellow parasites are on the hunt for them. Combining philosophical themes, some serious violence, high-octane action, and some really funky music, Parasite is probably one of the shows that I'd eagerly, blindly recommend to someone who hasn't watched anime at all. I think that after all of these years, the original story from the manga that's over 3 decades old still holds up strongly. Definitely put this on your watch list if you want to watch some action horror anime. Well, I guess that's more than enough anime for you to enjoy in the upcoming Halloween week. Which ones are you most excited about? Which ones have you already seen? And how did you find them? Please share your thoughts and sentiments down in the comment section below, and we can have fun chatting about anime